you can quickly get enough of a gauge. And 5th edition, this is kind of what it's supposed to be, is you figure out the rules that work for your table in the moment. And invisibility in the stealth rules, that is 100% the case, and it makes the spell balloon in power a little bit, probably.
Hello, friends. Robert Bevan here, author of the Caverns Creatures series of comedy, fantasy novels, and short stories. With me is Sam West, and today we're talking about the spell Invisibility.
I can't quite. I can do that. That feels
Now,
screwed.
I think you're right the first time when you just put your hands up, because that's kind of like with the invisibility rules. That's all right. I can't see you, but I know where you are. And we'll get into it.
Yeah. So this is a 2nd level spell for bards, sorcerers, warlocks, wizards, artificers, moon domain clerics. I don't know what that's from. Anyway, encircle of the grassland druids. This is a 2nd level spell, like I said, cast off of an action range of touch, rolls magic material components. It requires an eyelash encased in gum arabic. Concentration up to an hour. A creature that you touch becomes invisible until the spell ends. Anything the target is wielding or carrying is invisible as long as it is on the target's person. The spell ends if the target attacks or casts a spell. Anything else is fair game. At higher levels, when you cast a spell using 2nd or 3rd levels, a 3rd level slot or higher, you can target one additional creature for a slot level above 2nd. So if you use it as a 3rd level, you get 2 creatures, 4th, 3, 5th, 4, etc., etc., etc. The invisible condition we should read as well. So this thing says, an invisible creature is impossible to see without the aid of magic or a special sense. For the purpose of hiding, the creature is heavily obscured. The creature's location can be detected by any noise it makes or any tracks it leaves. Attack rolls against the creature have disadvantage, and the creature's attack rolls have advantage. Those are separate paragraphs. This is a state. It doesn't matter if you know where it is. It doesn't matter if you can see it with see invisibility. It doesn't matter if it's glowing because you shot it or hit it with a branding smite. It has advantage on its attack rolls, and creatures have disadvantage attack rolls against it. That is just a status that this gets. So,
yeah.
Invisibility. What a spell.
We've talked about it so many times. It keeps coming up on our best of lists, and comparing it to other things. But yeah, now is the video, the invisibility video.
Yes. This is an effect that is at its best out of combat. This is an effect that is really, really powerful out of combat. So we have to consult the vision rules, which is my least favorite sentence to say about any kind of game. We have to consult what heavily obscurity is and all of that, which is in the environment, but it's not all in the environment. There are other places because you have to check the actions for hide and stuff. But the basic thing that we care about most is heavily obscurity, which we can consult. And heavily obscured for vision and light basically says a heavily obscured area such as darkness, opaque fog, or dense foliage blocks vision entirely. A creature effectively suffers the blinded condition when trying to see something in that area, which in translating to invisibility means creatures are functionally blinded when trying to perceive you. Now, we are 1 level deep. Time to go 2 levels deep. You can check the blinded condition to see what that does, shall we? So,
great.
Yeah, blinded.
You must have as many tabs open as I do.
A blind creature can't see and automatically fails any ability checks that require sight, and attack rolls against the creature have advantage, but the creature's attack rolls have disadvantage. You'll notice it says a blinded creature can't see and automatically fails ability checks that require sight. So that means hiding while invisible, things that use only sight to detect you should automatically fail the condition or the check to try to see you with the perception check because you are invisible.
Sounds reasonable.
Cohesive? Coherent?
Yes.
Now, this gets very messy immediately because you often are engaging in this game with more than just your sight. And all of a sudden the blinding condition doesn't matter because you can hear, because you can smell, because you can see tracks, perhaps. And it gets very muddled and very messy unbelievably quickly, to the point where it is going to play different table to table. I think of the tables that I have DM'd for and played for, I DM it consistently. I don't think I've ever seen another DM it the same way I have DM'd it, nor have I seen another DM it the same way another DM has DM'd it. That includes online.
Yeah.
So there are some minor differences and quick rule of cools that are called, and a lot that's glossed over whenever you start dealing with this these conditions and sight and stuff, I'm going to talk about it from my experience. Your experience may vary, but generally speaking, what happens when things are invisible is until there is an opportunity for them to be revealed and they make decent stealth checks, like any stealth checks at all, they are not going to be generally perceived. And again, unless the environment says otherwise. If it's particularly muddy, yeah, sure, they can be seen. But if it's an average tavern, they're probably not going to be noticed. Oh, if they're just invisible in the corner. If they're sneaking into a prison, they're probably not going to be noticed unless there's big echoey hallways. There are little conditions that you care about and you track whenever you're doing kinds of invisible espionage missions, and that happens a lot. It is a huge bread and butter ability to be breaking into places and wanting to not be seen doing that, and this goes right alongside them. It is a integral tool to most kind of breaking and entering plans. It is and how we sort of examine it, how it functions, matters a lot when we're talking about the broad scope of this complex of a spell. I think.
Yes. So, like, yeah, all right. You said it's most useful outside of combat,
Yes.
and for all the reasons you just said, infiltration, all that. How about in combat?
Close to unusable. There are some characters that can get by without making attack rolls or casting spells. Those characters are very few and far between, and they're normally going to be the kind of characters where you would be as effective casting Sanctuary on them as you would be casting Invisibility and having them still function. Often what this looks like is it's a prep to an encounter that you would be walking into anyway, right? So you're exploring a dungeon. The rogue is exploring the dungeon invisibly, so you have a numbers advantage. They pop out. First attack gets advantage because the creature did not see them whenever they arrived to make the attack roll, assuming they were stealthing beforehand. That stealth check is important to the rules as written. If they aren't making stealth checks, they are hypothetically known, even if they are not seen, so they shouldn't have advantage on their attack roll. But you're going to get into messy circumstances table to table where people are going to shortcut. Oh, obviously you'd be hiding while you're trying to be invisible and you sneak up behind them, and they definitely would fail because they automatically should fail because they only rely on sight because they're blinded. Again, it's messy. How I tend to run it is you normally, if you attack for invisibility, you just have advantage because you're invisible, and that default is how that does work with that condition.
Yes. I mean, what's the argument against that?
There isn't one. I just jumped through a lot of hoops to say that the stealth checks are an integral part to not being known where you are, and I conflated that with the advantage on the attack roll.
Right.
I hate this spell.
I don't hate the spell. I hate all the confusing rules like around it regarding vision, the invisible condition, and you know, blindness, heavy obscurity. There are a lot of balls in the air that they're trying to juggle. This all could have been made a lot simpler.
Yes, especially given that it's half of this is contained in the Vision of Light rules, half of this is contained within the hide action, which we haven't even consulted yet. Let me consult that sacred text because that matters for how this functions. But it also is then also baked into the condition rules, and there's 2 nested conditions you have to go into to understand how invisibility basically functions, and you wouldn't know that unless you consulted the invisibility or the the heavily obscured rules, which are only mentioned in the environment section of the player's handbook, which is not in even a place you can find in the appendices. Anyway, the hide action says you make a dexterity stealth check and attempt to hide following the rules for hiding. So now we're taken to another section of the book, which is in ability scores. And in the ability scores, it has hiding. And then it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 paragraphs about how hiding works. And that includes what can you see? It includes passive perception. It includes you can't hide from creatures that can see you clearly and give away your position if you make noise, such as shouting a warning or knocking over a vase. An invisible creature can always try to hide. Signs of its passage might still be noticed, and it does have to stay quiet. So, if you want to have a fully encompassed idea of how this spell works, just based off the invisible condition, which is really what we're harping on about the most here, you have to go through so many hoops, and that's dumb. Wizards, fix your game. Put them in a concise place. Make it so I don't have to consult 12 different chapters to have a fundamental understanding how the system is supposed to work. That all aside,
yes.
I still hate invisibility. And while I think it is very powerful and very useful, even with all the hiccups, most players can put this on their table, play with it, and not have any of the problems that I'm bitching about, right? This is all sort of superfluous. Most of the time it'll be like, what do you mean it has advantage attack rolls? It knows where you are, it can see you. That is the first big hiccup that players actually run into. Beyond that, it's going to be like, oh yeah, you're invisible. You're going around doing invisible things. You take it as you'd expect an invisible creature to kind of function, as if it were like a superhero movie, right?
Yeah.
In that scope, it is really, really powerful. And unless it's doubling up with what the rogue is doing, it normally is replacing what the rogue is usually like their job is. A lot of the fun spells like Disguise Self, a lot of fun niche effects for breaking into places become a kind of obsolete whenever this is just a really easy tool that does that job incredibly well as every other job in the general space that well. If you need to get into somewhere, you don't really care about how you get into it. If you can just go, oh, we'll be invisible. I don't need to care about the specific people we're stealing from. I don't need to care about, what their defenses are. As long as they're visual based, invisibility is probably going to help me get through the front gate. I'll just sneak behind a cart or something. There's not a lot of the fun mini games that go into coming up with a scheme, getting a plan together, cobbling a disguise self to a forgery kit, to someone impersonating a guard, to a bard doing some charisma and charming checks. Normally it's, oh, I'll just go invisibly and scout the whole thing. And the DM isn't going to really want to fight you with that a lot of the time.
All right,
That's
well,
why
I
I
mean,
don't like the spell.
that's something, but invisibility doesn't completely replace something like disguise self. I mean, sometimes you don't just want to be a generic guard that nobody's going to notice walking in. You want to be a specific person that's going to go in and gather information by talking to people. And invisibility falls short there.
Not that sure it does, in that the situation where you would want that information, you have to ask yourself, Disguise Self is nichely powerful in this instance. Invisibility might still give you enough of the information you're looking for by being around the people you're trying to listen to, by finding that information through other means, like the ledgers they have on them, like the items that they could have around the place,
Yeah,
right? So
it
Disguise Self
might.
is much more narrow. And because it's much
Sure,
more
yeah.
narrow in the kinds of problems it solves, it's not going to be an option that a lot of people are going to be compelled to take whenever invisibility is just that much easier. It's just that accessible. It's like right there, right? It's the really shiny candy that's, oh, I should take this. It's good. I love this. It's sweet and delicious. But you don't get to experience, the dark chocolate. You don't get to experience the other experiences around you that might be less overtly appealing, that aren't going to be a every situation kind of candy. That's where I don't like it. I
Yeah,
hope that
see that argument.
metaphor made some amount of sense.
No, it does. It does. Um, all right, where to go from here? Um, let's. I felt like we covered a lot of it, but now invisibility with regard to like, are you somebody knowing where you are? That's always kind of confused me. Like,
Okay.
all right, I'm invisible. I want to go over there. Everybody sees me go over there,
Yes.
unless I
Correct.
take the hide action.
Unless you take the hide action, correct.
Yes. Now,
Which is stupid.
yeah, yes. Now if I take the hide action and move, I'm still hidden while I move.
Oh, okay. Now we have to consult the hiding rules. So let's look at moving while you're hiding. In combat, most creatures are stay alert for signs of danger. You might allow you to stay hidden as you approach creatures distracted, allow you to get advantage attack roll before you are seen. So passive perception contests these things. The GM decides when the circumstances are appropriate for you to hide. Invisible means you're always able to hide.
Okay.
You can't hide from creatures. So this, in older editions, this was moved silently, right? Like there was a
Yeah.
whole ability score and skill that went into this kind of, not ability score, skill that went into this kind of thing.
We got stealth.
Yeah, but hiding is not the same as making stealth checks, and moving silently is denotably different than hiding, right? Hiding is I make a stealth check to hide, and
I'm
hide
saying
then
that could be. I mean, a stealth check I would imagine could replace a move silently check in this case.
yes. The thing is, when you take the hide action, you make a death check to attempt to hide following the rules for hiding. You see gain certain benefits as described in the unseen attackers and targets section. Let's go consult that section.
We haven't been there yet, have we?
I hate. I want everyone to know that I started in the hiding rules text. It said when you try to hide, I then said, okay, I want to make sure I know what the benefits of that are. So I clicked on it and it took me to another section for specifically the hide action. And then I went from the hide section to the unseen attackers and targets section, which is back to the first page, 3 paragraphs under where the hiding rules were, sorry, 3 paragraphs above where the rules for vision and stuff were that we just referenced before. So I'm getting bounced around all over the place to try to understand how this system works. This is all to say, to answer your simple question, from my understanding, the hide check, when you take the hide action, it is not a all case stealth check. I believe when you are moving, you are not hiding, but you can hide while you're moving. So I would say you would make the stealth check as you move, as the hide action is part of the movement. That's how I'd roll it. I am not confident that's rules as written. That's how I, Samuel West, would handle that particular qualm. Commenters down below, let me know how you would handle that particular instance. That is normally how I would do it. And if you moved without taking the hide action, you would be perceived as to that is where you're going, your location is no. Does that answer your
Yeah,
question?
I mean, not remotely, but man, like we keep harping on about how powerful invisibility is, and I'm sure there are cases
It
where
is.
it is, but like, like even the infiltration stuff with what we just talked about. I mean, how are
The,
you getting through the gate?
you're hiding every single action as you're moving, right?
All right,
It's just
well,
every single
so
round, you're
yeah,
hiding, 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 hiding.
yeah,
A lot of DMs will shortcut that to one stealth check, which is
mhm.
not rules as written to my understanding, right? You're supposed to be consistently hiding, which is where hypothetically a rogue is good at this. I also don't know if you should have advantage on the stealth check. I don't think you're supposed to have advantage on the stealth check because that's just how I've seen it run a lot, but I have yet to see somewhere in all the rules that I have read, and maybe I just missed it because there's a lot of it, where it says you gain advantage on dexterity saving throw, or sorry, dexterity stealth checks. I haven't seen any of that. So it may just be the case that you don't get advantage on dexterity stealth checks. But again, hypothetically, creatures should automatically fail to observe you if they're only trying to observe you by sight. Which means if you're moving in spaces that aren't going to be loud, then things should automatically not be able to see you as long as you're taking the hide action while you are invisible. That should be rules as
Good.
written,
Yes.
which does let you get into those places being unseen, no questions asked. And while it is, most of this video has been Sam reading through rules and complaining about them, I can't express enough that no table that I've ever played with has done this deep a dive on invisibility and the stealth rules.
Yeah.
You can quickly get enough of a gauge, and 5th edition, this is kind of what it's supposed to be, is you figure out the rules that work for your table in the moment. And invisibility and the stealth rules, that is 100% the case, and it makes the spell balloon in power a little bit, probably. I still think it is, from my understanding of rules as written, incredibly powerful in the number of circumstances it encompasses. It also gives characters tools to engage in an access that is in the realm of skills that make characters that whole identity are those skills feel like they don't have anything special to really do anymore, or at least they're not the main contributing factor as to why things are able to happen, right? I want rogues that have invisibility. I don't necessarily want wizards that give rogues invisibility. I don't love that dynamic as the rogue's job is to be invisible. The wizard can make anyone's job be invisible and replace the rogue in a given circumstance. I find that erases some class identity of a mundane character that simply can't compete with a character that has second level spell slots.
Well, I don't know. Excuse me. I don't know because the rogue is still the one with the stealth. Depending on how much stealth factors into this, and I don't mind the wizard giving him invisibility at all. I mean, it's going to be different than giving the paladin invisibility in a lot of cases.
I don't think that's necessarily true. It'll only be different from the rules that we've read in the situations where sound is required. So if you're going down hallways with echoey footsteps, yes, it matters. If you're
Right.
not, if you're going through like a garden, or if you're going through outside space, or if you're going through, carpets, the paladin probably can get. I guess the paladin does have heavy armor that should make noise hypothetically. Okay,
Yeah,
sure.
and also
That's
the
fair.
garden can leave footprints, and you know,
But in that moment, the things looking for you would again, they should be automatically failing the perception checks to notice you if it's only relying on sight, right? That's the
should be.
important bit.
Um, we've talked about so much with this.
I feel like none of it's talked about invisibility.
The spell it turns you invisible. Like everything we've talked about is that.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
It really, like, so there were plenty of superhero shows with invisible characters, and I think they're actually a really good reference point as to why invisibility can be a really solid power. It is a thing to think about as a utility tool that has a lot of fringe uses that all of a sudden give you interesting positions, put you in locations you're not supposed to be, get you in and out of spots that you aren't allowed to be in, and do it seamlessly, right? This lets you blend into any environment as if you aren't there, and that is incredibly valuable in a game like Dungeons and Dragons where you're often going to be going places you're not supposed to be.
Yeah, I guess we'll call it there. I mean,
For all the belly
we
aching, this is still a 5 out of 5.
yeah, definitely. Just man, I feel like we've brought up more questions than answers.
I kind of agree.
But it gives people something to think about. And yeah, I feel like we've done our job as far as that goes.
True. Also, if you're a DM, you have to be aware the spell exists. You have to, the moment characters start using invisibility to get away with whatever they want, and that can be some tables. I've known many a pushover DM where invisibility lets players just kind of do whatever they want, Grand Theft Auto style, by like, oh, I go in and I just steal everything from the register while he's not looking. What's he gonna do? He can't see me. This is very quickly where you're gonna have to start making a high magic setting fit a high magic characters. Like your setting starts to have to match these things.
Or this is where you start diving into those gazillion rules we just covered.
What's easier?
All right. Well, that was Invisibility. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. This is a complicated spell and a complicated condition. We'd greatly appreciate your thoughts on the matter. What did we get right? What did we get wrong? What did we not address? Because, there's even more rules that we didn't cover.
I would love to know if there were any other chapters that has important rules for this that I missed, because I only covered 3.
All right. Well, thank you, and like, subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.